Welcome to the Ethics Experts, where we're elevating ethics and compliance and HR to the strategic level it's supposed to be.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ethics Experts. If it's your first time joining us, welcome. And if you are a returning subscriber, hello, bestie. I hope you're having an amazing day. See what happens when you subscribe to the Ethics Experts. You get a bonus greeting on every single episode. So hit that subscribe button. I am here with Donna McGrath. She's a former solicitor, the UK's #1 coach. She coaches lawyers. She coaches people in-house on leadership, on communication, and basically on being more strategic in their organization. Donna, welcome to the Ethics Experts. So happy to have you on.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
Good.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you on. I feel like we're like kindred spirits. We're like long-lost friends. We've been friends on LinkedIn for a long time, and we're finally getting to meet face-to-face. So super excited to pick your brain and see what you can do to help our listeners become more strategic. It's like a match made in heaven, you know?
Of course.
So tell me a little bit about, your path to becoming the #1 coach. And if that's not official, it's official from my eyes. Okay. So in my eyes, you are the #1 coach of in-house folks in the UK. And how did you get to that point?
Well, so just to confirm, I probably, I started off as the only, but because I was the first to start, I'm considered the lead coach and mentor for in-house lawyers in the UK and Ireland. And my journey started whenever I was a private practice lawyer. And I was one of those people that was working really long hours. I was a young woman, really slim, at the top of my game. And all of a sudden, my energy started to wane. I couldn't understand it, even though looking back, it doesn't take a rocket science to work out what was going on. I was working really long hours. I got into that mode of just being that really high performing individual, and I had to prove myself all the time. I was around people who had the same mindset as me, and we hung out with each other. And then I had a bit of a downfall myself. I started to take really bad anxiety, and it really affected me. So I went off, got myself some help, and I realized what I was doing. So I call this my first awakening. I've woken up twice.
Oh, that's the first one.
This is my first awakening. I realized that I was blaming other people for my situation. I looked around me. My family weren't that close with me anymore. My friends were few and far between. And the only ones that I had were like really, really work colleagues. Mm-hmm. So through my coaching, I realized I got a coach and I got a CBT specialist. I realized that I was creating this world myself. No one else was. It was just me. And it was because I had some belief systems that were not helping me as a human being. They were helping me to be a great lawyer, but they weren't helping me to be a good human being.
So what was that like when that light bulb turned on? Like when you came to this realization that this whole world you were living in was like a world of your making?
It was like, am I allowed to swear?
I mean, come on. This is the ethics expert, so yeah.
So no. I kept saying to my family and friends, it's like, how come no one ever told me this before?
Yeah.
How come no one was telling me I was turning up like this with them? And so it made me question a lot. It was a massive relief to realize that there was and there wasn't something wrong with me. It was just that I didn't have that perspective just needed to be twisted a little bit.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that, you were kind of plagued with all this anxiety. You mentioned that some of the ways that you were made you a really great lawyer, but it didn't make you a really good human being. So tell me about that dichotomy or that paradox.
Yeah, but this is something that I say. I'm not saying that this is true for everyone else. So in my brain and in my body, my whole belief system was, in order to get ahead in the legal world, you have to pull out all the stops. You need to turn up, work long hours, show your commitment, because if you work hard, you will get results. But me, I took that a little bit further. Mm-hmm. And because I felt I'm not getting the results that I want, And so I decided the way to do that was to work longer hours, work late, which meant that my focus wasn't great.
Mm-hmm.
I was tired. I was getting grumpy. I would get really snappy. And problem was I was getting rewarded for that behavior.
Right. So it's like a
And
vicious cycle, but there's also
yeah,
like the incentive piece of being like the pat on the back to be like, yeah, that was great. You really
yeah, I
bulldogged
wasn't
that
getting a
guy.
pat in the back because of my behavior, as in like the outputs of my behavior, but
Yeah.
I was getting a pat in the back because, oh, look at Donna, she works really long hours. She looks like she's really committed. So that belief system was reinforced.
Right.
So I believe for a very long time that if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be perceived to be a good lawyer.
Right. So that's the first awakening. So that, I mean, there's so much in that whole thing. You know?
We could
We could spend 2 hours on that, just that thing. Yeah, yeah.
But my second awakening was I was really lucky. I have to say I had some brilliant bosses and just, I mean, amazing people. I was very lucky to have those people around me because this was what I was doing this to myself.
Yeah, yeah.
So I was lucky to get a place as a secondment into a large organization over here in the UK, a big water company. And while I was there, because the legal team was part of a bigger team, a bigger business, and that business is so far ahead in terms of dealing with people and their anxieties and mental health and
Right.
etc. And they brought in specialists to talk to us about our different communication styles.
Mm-hmm.
So I was exposed to a fantastic tool, and I'm sure there's loads of people out there have heard of it, and some similar, which was called DISC.
Oh, DISC, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm now a DISC profiler myself because it really helped me. I got my report, and I then ended up having honest conversations with my colleagues, and I got honest feedback saying, Donna, now I understand why you're so determined. I understand why you need things done, because you just want everything to be perfect and you have to deliver. You're focused on delivery. But because they were so gracious and lovely with me, I actually sat back and thought, actually, but this is a double-edged sword, because as much as I was very focused on delivering, getting results for the business, the way I was doing it wasn't probably the best to bring people along. So that was like my second awakening. So for the first awakening was me understanding the story in myself, and the second one was really understanding my impact on other people
around you. Yeah,
around me.
So give us a little rundown of what DISC is for people who haven't been familiar with it.
DISC profiling is basically a tool that is based off a lot of stuff done by Carl Jung. Carl Jung, the
psychologist.
Yeah. And DISC, what it does, it shows you up a reflection of you and on your communication styles. So we undertake an assessment. We answer the questions. The questions are all categorized, and it brings you back a report which basically sets out what your preferred communication style is.
Got it.
And how that might interact with the different styles. But the great thing about DISC, Nick, is that you don't have to be pigeonholed with it. It's a great tool to commence that self-awareness.
What do you mean you don't have to be pigeonholed with it?
Well, because in there you've got 4 styles that it actually says that you might fall into, which is D, I, S, or C. DISC. And sometimes whenever people get the report, they run around saying, oh, I'm a D, or I'm an I, or I'm an S, or I'm a C. And when in reality, we fall in and out of those styles depending on where we are in our lives, depending on what our priorities are, etc.
Okay.
And depends who we're speaking to. So if we look at it in a context, for example, I coach a number of really senior in-house female lawyers, and they say that sometimes they're more of a dominant style at home, where they wouldn't be so dominant in the office, because they realize if they were like that in the office, they may be interpreted, their behavior might be interpreted, or their communication style might be interpreted as a little bit
aggressive,
directed,
too
too
direct.
directed.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that's why I say it's not to be used as a pigeonhole. What I love about it is it actually starts that introspective journey for people where they actually can start looking inside and starting questioning themselves about, oh, I actually realize I do this, but when? And then my coaching is, but when is it you do that? What's
Right.
the circumstances that's happening? And for them to become a lot more aware of how they're turning up in different scenarios and why. And when they know that, they can move between those styles, so they become a lot more effective as leaders.
Got it. So you wouldn't say that your disc profile is something that's etched in stone, and you don't use the. You would say that this is really an opportunity for you to have a better understanding of how you communicate in these different situations, and maybe start to develop the tools to flex into different styles that would be more effective depending on who you're speaking to or what the situation is.
Exactly. Some people really psychologically can't get their head around the fact that, oh, it's just who I am and I'm not going to change.
Yeah.
But in reality, it isn't your personality. It's just your communication style, your preferred communication style. And we all go to our preferred communication style dependent on where we've got results before. And the people that we've had around us, and just maybe what we were used to, and the environments that we've been around our whole lives. But that doesn't mean to say that has to be, I say it doesn't have to be your prison sentence. Yeah, so it can be that you can actually realize that you can broaden your skills. And I remember a post that you wrote a while back, Nick, and it was about people being stuck in their little mind prisons.
Yeah.
And that really rung home with me, because it actually, I refer to that now whenever I'm coaching people around disc, to say it doesn't have to be a mind prison. You can break that door open and explore. But if you want to come back, you can.
You can go back to that safe little prison you've built for yourself if you want.
Yes.
Have you seen, though, I mean, maybe we're kind of alluding to it or talking tangentially about it. Have you seen somebody who maybe doesn't have the internal awareness or that self-awareness, whatever you want to call it, sort of it's not that developed, and then they take one of these assessments, and then it's almost like they're like, oh, I guess this is who I am, and it's almost like a prescriptive thing for them that they end up getting trapped in?
Well, this is why I think it's really important, if you do have your disc profile or anything like that done, that you actually have a qualified coach to take you through it. Because there are some brilliant trainers out there on disc, and don't get me wrong, they're very, very good, and they understand the tool and they understand the different styles brilliantly. And I've got my qualification in the tool, but the one thing that it doesn't do is actually help people to get a better understanding of how to apply it,
right?
From a coaching perspective. So yes, I have had people who have been stuck, but when you start asking those coaching questions, hence why coaching comes in and is so impactful, where people can really explore inside themselves the things that are happening for them.
Yeah, because otherwise you can sort of just kind of stay stagnant there, or now you just have some words to articulate some tendencies you might have, and there's no way to like grow out of it or something.
Yeah, and there's some people like take their profile and walk around with it like a badge and go, "Oh,
I'm
look,
a D.
I'm a high I.
Look at all this red."
I'm a high I.
Yeah,
Woo!
exactly.
So that means I can get away with being.
Hey, it's just the way I am. I'm just a jerk,
Yeah.
See? Yeah. So you're working. So you had this first awakening. You get this job at the water company.
Yeah.
And you take this disc profile. What made you take that test, and how did you bridge kind of that first awakening to the second awakening? Because there was obviously a bunch of real growth that happened sort of internally from that first awakening. But then with respect to the second awakening, it sounds like that was really the thing that kind of maybe broke you out of your shell and was kind of the catalyst for the impact that you're having now.
Yeah. So I think there's two things. There was loads of stuff going on for me personally, because I studied in England. My family was in Ireland. So it takes me a while to build up trust about people around me. So I ended up getting my own coach and mentor. the company did say to me, "Oh, could use someone internally," and that I thought fine, but because coaching and mentoring is so individual and so personalized, I felt that I needed someone completely independent from my work. So that journey was the difference between that time is we're talking about 2009 to 2013.
Okay. So the 4 years that you're talking about there, what do you mean the distance between that journey between when you started at the water company and they recommended a coach and to where you founded an external coach?
Well, I got my own coach, external coach, but internally, like I say, and I'll say this again, my bosses there were absolutely brilliant. They really encouraged me to get a mentor internally, which was brilliant. But I decided I needed my own independent
Got it.
coach.
So when you were trying to find that internal coach, sorry to derail you. When you were trying to find that internal mentor, you were getting this encouragement from your leadership. What was that process like? Like, how could you find the mentor? I understand that probably most of the growth came.
I had a mentor assigned to me.
Oh, they just gave you one. Okay.
Yeah.
And what was that process like for you with that internal mentor?
Difficult because I like to choose. I'm very independent and single-minded sometimes, which to my downfall sometimes. But at the same time, I know what's good for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I did dig my heels in, and I just thought, I'm just going to go and get my own coach and figure it out myself. And I did. And I ended up leaving and starting up my own consultancy business. It was legal consultancy.
Yeah.
And I wanted to get more experience of working in various different in-house legal teams. And whenever I'd done that, I realized that the same challenges that the team were having around me in one place were the same in all the different places. And because I was able to overcome it and change my impact, I thought I could help other people. So I started to help some people in the different businesses that I was in. And then I thought, I'm not having enough reach in here. So I decided to leave and set up my business, The Lawyer's Coach.
And what was that common thread that was running through? You're in this business, you're in this team, you're with this team, you're seeing these same kind of challenges. What is that common thread just generally?
The biggest thing is this. So if anybody's listening out there and they are an in-house lawyer or even an in-house in compliance, really, there's sentences that they say, they don't value us, they don't take it seriously, they don't understand. What's the point? So there was a lot, there is and still is a lot around this value, feeling valued,
right?
Because of sometimes the interpretation that compliance and in-house legal teams have about how serious the business take on board what they do.
Yeah, and that leads to so much like burnout. It leads to so much frustration. You get jaded. You feel chewed up and spit out by the business because you care so much, but you're like the only person who cares. I mean, that's a very frustrating thing.
That's really interesting you mentioned that, Nick, as well, because it brings it on to the second thing. So I've written an article in this, and it's going to be published this week, about the top things that are going on for in-house lawyers and compliance teams, is that sense of duty.
Right.
There's a massive sense of duty.
And they're like wired that way.
Yes, and I wonder if it's because of the fact that you're a solicitor or a lawyer, or you're policing something, or you're setting out standards. I know it was something that was drilled into me whenever I was qualifying as a solicitor. You know, you have a duty to your client. You have a duty. You have to make sure, and this is like wired into you in some way.
Yeah.
But the big challenge that in-house lawyers particularly face is that sense of duty can sometimes really get in the way of their sense of duty to themselves.
Yeah, because it's hard to prioritize, like what comes first.
Yeah, you come first, because if you're not in a good state, you know, it's like you're a father, aren't you, Nick? It's like if you're not in a good place, that impacts kids and
Totally.
everything around you.
Well, it's like when you're on an airplane and they say, if we're crashing, you got to put your own mask on first before you help somebody else because,
Exactly.
you know,
Yeah.
you need that oxygen yourself.
Yeah. But that's a big, big, big thing. They need this. They need that. They need this. Which then comes on to the third big point, which is a mistake that we make. This leads to a big mistake, and it does not help our clients, is that we overcompensate then for inefficiencies within the organization because we end up doing the work.
That's interesting. Tell me some more about that because that has really far-reaching implications, not just personally, but also across the business in many cases.
Yeah, and I'm not saying this is true for every single one, but I'm just saying that more often than not, I am seeing whenever we have someone who's saying that they don't feel valued, for example, because the business isn't listening, or they don't feel valued, mostly because they're working really long hours and no one's giving a big thanks. Sometimes they're not getting a big thanks because they are doing the work for other departments, and if the other department actually gives a big thanks, it actually exposes them.
You're creating a disincentive for someone to even acknowledge you, which keeps you in this vicious cycle of like unappreciation, burnout, jaded, you know, all that.
Yeah, and that comes from a single thought or a couple of single thoughts that we're telling ourselves. And what I coach people on is we dig really deep and get back underneath that to get that time back, to get re-energized and take back control so that the legal function is actually really delivering on what they're meant to be there doing. And part of it is something that we talked about beforehand, is about how we convey that message to the business. Because I've had feedback in my early legal career that, oh, maybe you're not just being commercial enough, Donna. Maybe you're just being too much like a lawyer. And, you know, you're looking at this very black and white. You know, we're a commercial organization. Sometimes risk isn't as black and white as that.
But what lawyer doesn't get that at their core? I mean, of course they get that. That's exactly what you learn in law school.
Well, exactly. So, but one thing that is great as an in-house lawyer is that you do get to see risk work out in front of you. You get to see it to play out, and you can see it tangibly, because whenever you're an in-house lawyer, not only do you see the risk, you also see the places operationally within the business that can actually really mitigate a risk. So, for example, if I'm given advice on in a contract and I'm saying, well, we can't accept this risk because it's far too high for us to accept as an organization. But if you actually get to understand what the company does operationally, you can say, yes, it's a high risk, but the likelihood of it is really low because we've got all these assurances built around it. And I look at that kind of stuff similarly whenever I look at compliance risk as well. Yes, there has to be this hard line and you have to have some standards. But in reality, if the compliance person doesn't understand the operational aspect of the business, then there is a disconnect in the communication between the function and the operational part of the business. And if one keeps speaking about black and white and the other one keeps saying risk is okay, never the twain even will meet. So part of my work is to get the in-house lawyers to build that understanding and to reach out and to really get into the business and understand it. So they speak the business's language as opposed to just speaking legal language.
Yeah. What do you think keeps people from doing that? Because what you're saying seems very obvious, right? It seems very obvious to learn it. And I think maybe this game is a lot more like poker than it is like chess. You know, with chess, all the information is on the board. You can look at any situation and you know the rules of engagement. In poker, there's so much context involved, and there's so much you're making bets, obviously, in that game. Why is it so tough for folks to take that step forward and assess the business, understand the business so they can better, you know, understand and sort of underwrite to the calculated risks that are inevitably need to be taken for a business to grow and, you know, move down the road?
Well, what a couple of things that I'm seeing, and like it's different for everybody else because we all got our own stories that's going on in our own head as to why we're not making that step. I think that it could be some of the things that I'm seeing, particularly for like an in-house legal team that's been there for a little while. I think sometimes we forget that we're in a relationship and we treat it as work as opposed to relationships. So we can get really caught up in politics and what this person might say and what that person might say, when if we could just remove all of that and just ask the question, what is it they need? What do they need from me? Rather than going in with this idea of what you should be doing and how you should be perceived, and trying to convince other people that you are good or your team are actually a team that the company needs, because that's the biggest threat to a team is like, should we go externally? If we could just move away from ourselves for a moment and remember that we're in a relationship, because if that was your partner or your children or your brother or sister, wouldn't you just ask, what's going on? What are you seeing from me, and what do I need to do better?
Yeah, just bringing some, like, again, it's so bizarre. It's like just bringing some basic, I mean, this is like a recurring theme on the show. It's like bringing some basic humanity into the job, bringing some basic tactics or whatever that you utilize outside of work to build relationships and maintain relationships, bringing those in to a different departmental discussion or to your counterpart in this different area can do so much, not only to like make you more effective, but also to shatter this view that many of us feel we have within our organizations as being a cost center, and it feeds into that cycle you alluded to. If they don't get it, nobody listens, I'm the only one who cares, and blah, blah, blah. The only way to break that cycle, again, is by doing something different. And that something different, what's nice is that it's usually doing something that you're already wired to do, just being more human.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just sometimes whenever we get into the workplace environment, it's this, which is, I think, another big thing for people about the stories that they tell themselves about how they should behave in a workplace.
Yeah. I mean, where do they get that picture, you know?
Yeah, and it just adds that layer of insecurity, thinking, what will my boss say? What do they think if I approach it this way? And it's like, it becomes tactical. If we can remove those away and just sit down in front of our boss. I would always say, if you are not someone who is the head of the team, you would need to get their permission to go and do this, and you go and do it together. Any leaders out there, I would say, you just get your team to go out there and sit down with a cup of coffee in front of whoever, and just say, what is it can we do?
Yeah, it's not even that. It's, again, it's just not that crazy. It's not that complex. It's but it does take some courage, right? Otherwise, everyone would be doing it. So what is that courage rooted in? Like, why is that so hard for people to do? I mean, it just seems so basic.
Well, some people have some really embedded fears about how they will be perceived, what their role is, what's expected of them, what isn't expected of them. Some people I work with won't do that because they're so afraid of speaking up, because maybe historically, whenever they were a child, that they were told to shut up and put up. And I'm actually seeing this in a generation of people. And the younger lawyers that I'm coaching don't have a problem with this.
Interesting. Tell me about that. That seems very profound right here.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to. This, as I said, this isn't true for absolutely.
This is broad brushstrokes. These are generalizations.
This is broad brush stuff. So, people around my age, I'm 45, and I coach. I coach all different age ranges and all different levels. I mostly coach leaders, but leaders can start at a very young age. And what I'm finding with more maybe the late 20s to mid 30s, that brave gene is there. Their problem is they need to pull it back a bit.
Yeah.
Because of how other people are saying, no, you're a bit mouthy, or you whatever, blah, 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 calm it down a bit, whatever, blah, blah. And they're not just reading their environment very well. So I do a lot of work on environmental awareness. But people around, I don't know, is it a culture thing? Is it, I don't know. But I find around my age that maybe people are more dutiful, as in like, I'm not going to say that because it's not my place to say, or that's someone else's place to say. If I say this, the impact on me is, I might fear that if I say that my job could be on the line. So it's like maybe a more tentative nature.
Yeah.
In around maybe the people who for example, I'm coaching at the moment, where they go more of that more tentative nature.
What if it all comes down to whether you had Facebook in high school?
Possibly.
I mean, it really might be that.
I do think that, I'm not an expert, but I do think that there's a big thing right now as well, which is having a big influence on us in the world right now, is people speaking out.
Yeah.
People speaking. We've had loads of events over the last 2 years, both in various different camps in the world, where there has been real significant events, and people of certain demographics are speaking out now where they've probably felt afraid to speak out before. And I think that's becoming a big thing.
Is it good or bad?
And I think it's a bit of a social trend, and I think it's fantastic.
You do? Okay.
I love it. That's just part of one of my values, is being brave and speaking out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because, the level of sort of speak outedness that we currently see is just, I mean, I don't even know how you measure it, but it's definitely orders of magnitude more than it was.
We can use our senses. It just feels more, doesn't it?
It feels like it. Yeah, it feels like everybody has a voice, and yeah, I wonder what the implications of that are going to be, because we're really like at the crest of a wave here, right? Like we're riding the frontier of this whole thing. It's all new and everything else. We don't know how it's going to kind of shake out. How do you think it's going to end up playing out? Like, what do you think the lawyers who are 8 and 10 years old now are going to be like when they become lawyers? Obviously, there's not 8-year-old lawyers. I'm saying the kids who are 8 and 10 years old now, like, do you think it's even going to be more so than what you're seeing from this younger generation of leaders that you're coaching?
Well, just to sidestep that question a little bit, I'll be a bit of a politician here.
Yeah, do it. Say it depends,
there has been some reports here in the UK. We have a brilliant charity here called Law Care. And Elizabeth Rimmer, the CEO, absolutely fantastic lady. I'm going to be speaking to her soon. And they produced a lot of reports on mental health and well-being within the legal sector in the UK, and mostly predominantly focused on private practice. And there are some reports that say that some junior lawyers are experiencing a lot more mental health issues.
Interesting.
They're quite new, so we don't really know what it was like before, but they've got this data right now. So there is a proportion of people who aren't speaking out, maybe speaking up about those things. And because they're not, then law firms are thinking that they're doing enough to support that. If we could get those people feeling brave enough to speak up, like some other people are within the sector, I would love it if they were. I think it might kind of open up the sector's eyes. I'm just going very narrow in terms of the legal sector, particularly in the UK. It might allow better conversations to be happening within the industry, so that the right measures can be in place to ensure that is managed going forward. Because my secondary campaign, Nick, is all about hammering out stress and anxiety within the profession, and giving people that voice. So if we can lean into the rest of the world speaking out and speaking up and knowing and seeing that it's okay to do that, I would love to see junior lawyers being okay to say, actually, do you know what? I'm having a bit of a crappy time right now.
Yeah.
It's causing me a lot of stress.
Yeah.
That's what I would love to see happen.
Yeah, it's kind of an uphill battle though, right? Because it's kind of to your point. I'm kind of catching up to you a little bit because it's kind of an uphill battle because these are these guardian kind of roles. These are these advisory roles. You have to have that kind of composure and all these kinds of things. You have to work the crazy hours because that standard has been set forth by your predecessors, and that's just the sort of culture of these types of roles that ends up kind of keeping us in these cycles that are kind of destructive and kind of toxic in many ways that can end up kind of translating into kind of bad things happening in other aspects of our lives.
Yeah. Well, I had one of my best bosses, and I'm going to name his name in here. So, Richard, if you're listening, this one's for you. So I had a great boss in National Grid because he would actually tell me, "You've done enough."
Wow. How nice to hear that, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Why are people so scared to say that, though? Do you think it's just because they don't get it? Do you think because they're just fear-plagued themselves?
I don't know. One thing that I will say about Richard, he was very good with people. And, there's some people who are just very good with people and they can see it. They just watch their people. And I think that's an amazing leadership skill. To be able to take the time out and have the presence of mind to sit back and watch your people for not just their outputs and what they can deliver. It's about watching them and how they are is massive.
Yeah, it does take a presence of mind. It does take a willingness to sort of stop. It also takes, I think, an understanding of like what's important.
Yes. And it's really interesting because I realized working for him, because he was like that with me, I wanted to do more.
Interesting.
It was the kind of culture that it bred was loyalty and trust.
Yeah. Why is it? It's just bizarre that that's so hard for people to get right. Again, it's the same ways that we want to treat our children. It's the same ways that we want to treat our friends to make them feel safe and so forth. But we don't want to make, or we don't think to make the people that we go to work with every day that we're sitting in the foxhole with feel those same things. It's just a very bizarre dichotomy. That I don't know. Did it used to work in the factories of the 1920s, or like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just bizarre. Yeah. I can't understand it, and I can't sort of crack the nut on it.
Well, I can't speak for everybody, but I think when we step in, even in what I've noticed as well is whenever I work with people, that the stuff that we work with is actually, if you boil down what I do, Nick, it's relationship management.
Yeah.
If we break it all down, that's what it is.
Interesting.
And I see people going out and utilizing what they've learned in their own relationships.
Outside of work, you're saying?
Outside of work, it's across the board. Because the things that whenever you get a coach to do the kind of stuff that I do is about raising self-awareness, emotional management, which is a massive one, people awareness, which is massive, and the one that some people forget about is your environment. And like, I'm often speaking up, but being wary of the environment that you're speaking up in, so that it has an impact, a better impact. And whenever you bring all of that stuff in, that's not just stuff that you use in work.
Good point.
So it all boils down to, as you say, relationship management. But there's just something that happens to us whenever we get into an institution and we work there, because there's an extra layer. And the funny things that we tell ourselves, and I hear people tell themselves about that environment, is very interesting. Yeah,
the stories we tell ourselves color the lens through which we see the world. And we tell us those stories over and over and over again. Well, then you only start to see those things that are part of those stories. Again, positive or negative.
Yeah, exactly. Like, on a very personal note, I took a bit of an anxiety attack yesterday. I do have underlying anxiety.
You were nervous about this interview?
I was really nervous about speaking to you.
See, it wasn't that bad. It hasn't been that bad. Okay.
No, just a little minor thing. And I'd been on citalopram for 7 years, actually, and I come off them very recently. So kind of give myself a bit of a pat in the back.
Yeah, nice job.
So I took a little anxiety attack yesterday, and the transition between me yesterday and now is massive. Like, I'm sure if you're looking at me, you can see me, you probably think this girl is really smiley. But if you had saw me yesterday, I was not smiley.
Wow.
And I was telling myself I wasn't good enough. I was telling myself that no one wants to hear what I've got to say. But very quickly then I had to get over myself because it wasn't about me.
Yeah, right. Isn't that funny? When you shift the focus from yourself to outward, it's so much easier to get over yourself or something.
Yeah.
Isn't that nuts? Well,
I know.
I don't know. I'm sure that your bounce back without those aids is much quicker now than it was even 5 whatever years ago, which is a sign of growth, which is phenomenal, right?
Oh my gosh, I call that the rumination period.
Yeah.
I'm sure everybody, you've heard of that word. It's like how long, my job, whenever I say to a client, is my job is see that period between where you're triggered and where you actually take positive action is to shorten that.
Got it. That's how you can measure your success or your impact as you can compress those pieces.
Yeah. It gives you more clarity of mind. It gives you more presence. And it gives you better impact. It makes people, not that it's about me, but it makes people listen to me because it actually helps them. You know, and it's that presence of mind it's like Yoda.
Yeah, totally. Floating, right. So let me ask you this. So you coach a lot of people, you coach a lot of like high caliber people. Obviously, if you're coaching a leader, they've exhibited, they're probably somebody smart. They've probably exhibited some level of top performance to ascend to whatever position that they're in. We all deal with these issues of, you know, we all have these, to use your term, these rumination periods, between the time when you're triggered to the time where you start to take positive action. As you look back over all the people that you've coached and all the successes that you've had, what are the handful of tools or the handful of frameworks that you kind of consistently end up seeing people successfully apply to kind of materially compress that time in their own lives?
Yeah. So I've developed my own tools. I'll not give them all away because
you got to eat, you know.
I gotta eat. But one of the big things that I work with someone on is what I call is your pattern detector. Where actually forget about that. That comes after. The first thing I help people to realize is when they've been triggered. So it's understanding, we go through understanding stress, understand actually when there's certain feelings that emanate within their own bodies. So sometimes we all respond to stress very differently. We work out what it is for them. Number one, self-awareness. You know you've been triggered. So the earlier you know you've been triggered, the earlier you can handle it and the less time that you will be in that rumination period. Because all too often, some people don't even realize they've been triggered and it gets higher. And what happens is the cortisol, the stress hormone, starts to build and build. And the longer that's building in you, the harder it is to remove it.
Interesting. Yeah, that cortisol is a killer, huh?
Yeah, we don't want cortisol.
We don't.
So a little bit of it can be okay, but it's not all the time. Then the second tool that we use is whenever we get someone if someone has been really triggered, I actually help leaders whenever they have got someone in front of them who's been triggered and they can see it, you can read it, is to ask a logical question. Because what's happening in our bodies is that the cortisol is coming into our brain and is starting to shut down our prefrontal cortex and the logical part of our brain. So the emotions are taking over, a little bit of science. So the thing is, what if we ask ourselves a logical question or someone else, that slows down the cortisol going into the prefrontal cortex.
Interesting.
In our brain. So people talk about stress being psychological. It's not. When we understand it being a physical thing, that's when we can take physical reactions to it to combat it. So a lot of people who I work with don't understand, but they learn certain things that they can do in their body that to trick their brain that they're not in a threat situation anymore.
Like what's an example of that?
Wonder Woman pose.
Really?
Yes.
It's just a strong pose. And
yeah,
men can do that pose too and feel strong.
Yes, I'm doing it right now.
Oh,
It
cool.
sends dopamine to your brain.
Interesting. What's up with that? I mean, how crazy?
We are all just, everything is physical. It's all a physical thing.
Ah,
And another thing that I get people to do, like, this is like common sense, but not common practice, is breathe. So I teach people to breathe properly. I can even say, I'm watching you breathe. You're breathing from here.
is that not proper?
No, you have
That's
to
why
breathe
I'm
from
on edge right now. Maybe I'm kidding. You got to breathe down here.
down into your diaphragm and out.
Got
Are you
it.
taking any more? I said clean. I live in the middle of the Midlands, Coventry. But you're getting more oxygen into your body, and that calms your body down.
Interesting. Yeah, because you start taking these short breaths, and it's just like gets you more heightened, and
Yeah.
it just like you see people kind of spiral. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
And another really simple one is just to simply stretch. Just get up and walk and stretch, move your body. So you're releasing tension within your body.
Interesting. Yeah, it's
Like
like we don't
this-
even think about this stuff.
None of this is actually coaching. That's not even the coaching part. That's just to stop your trigger.
Got it.
And then after that, when you've got a little bit more presence of mind, I get people to sit down. I've got a tool, and they can question themselves, do self-questions to understand their pattern and what led them to be triggered.
Wow,
Where
very
we
cool.
check your thoughts, your emotions, your physicality, your behavior, and we look at the belief system that sits behind it.
Wow.
And then in the coaching sessions, we reframe that. And
Right.
that's where you have that's whenever earlier on you mentioned about just a slight tweak in perspective and everything. And then you come out with different results.
Totally. Yeah, and I bet with these frameworks, once people can start to kind of diagnose or recognize when those triggering events are occurring, they can probably start to get gains pretty quickly. It's not like, you're going to the gym and you're lifting weights for 9 months and you don't see any difference in your body. It's like you can start to see differences immediately,
Yeah. Funny, I've just developed another tool today where people can track how well they're doing on their reframes.
Oh, cool.
So what I do in my program is my job is to make sure they don't need me anymore. So it's like anything, it's like habits. So I've developed this habit tracker. And the problem that some people have when they come when people don't get results if they don't practice.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had someone who's been with me for nearly a year now, and he just does it automatically in his brain. At the start, he really struggled. He had to sit down and
Like map
write it out,
yeah.
and map it out and move it. And we had to be really consistent with him doing that. So
Yep.
it became a habit.
Interesting. But now it's second nature, and now he's got a
Second
dexterity
nature.
with it that's probably something that he at some point thought he would never even have,
And now he's teaching it to other people himself.
Wow, you've built a little competitor there. I'm just kidding. So what was it like? So you started to see these trends. You're doing this work. You're seeing these trends, this common thread throughout, the same sort of negative self-talk. They don't care about me. They don't get it, whatever. And then at some point, you're like, so you're starting to hear this confluence of kind of similar feedback.
Yes.
And then fast forward to some other point where now you have this super successful business where you're teaching these people these techniques to kind of elevate their impact in their organization. What was that journey like, and what was the actual catalyst for you to say, you know what, I need to shift focus and really kind of move to more of a coaching angle?
So it was always a coaching angle, because whenever when I've gone back to working in National Grid, they're brilliant. They give me the time out to go and get my qualification to coach.
Oh, nice. Really an amazing company.
Oh, amazing company.
Yeah.
I've been so lucky,
Wow.
so lucky to have that support around me. But I know what I'd done to get me that. I told them what was important to me, and I was able to have the presence of mind to say, and I can help you guys as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I was able to be quite strategic with it.
Smart.
So, and the being the smart wasn't about, I was genuine. I was actually genuinely.
Yeah, but it's smart to make that connection and make this dream a reality that's a win-win,
It's Exactly. So, going from the coaching, I had coaching around 2000 and was it 2010, 2011. No, I'm telling you a lie, it was a bit later than that. It was actually whenever I was in America. I lived in America for a while.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How'd you like that?
I absolutely loved it.
Did you? Where did you live?
I lived in Philadelphia.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So the city of brotherly love.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, I was there. I was a little bit earlier than that. And then I just got introduced to that kind of a world, and to know that there are people out there that will pay for people to help them.
Yeah.
And I just thought, if I could just help people discover what I just discovered, because I was running around, people must have thought I was a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
Because I was running around saying, I just didn't know this. How come no one's told me this stuff before? And that's why I call it an awakening. So I then we moved back to the UK because I had to move back. And then we were doing the disc stuff as well and work as well. So I got my own coach because I was feeling a little bit lost for my own personal reasons. I got a coach. And then I absolutely fell in love with this couple called Tony and Nikki V. And they run a coaching training. And I ended up becoming qualified through those guys, through Master Coach.
Cool. Very cool. That's a great program. I've heard of it. A lot of great coaches come out of it. I always like to ask coaches, like, it seems very bizarre to me that people are so down to get a fitness coach, right? Like,
yes.
And of course your fitness matters, but it doesn't like matter that much. I mean, you can kind of be healthy on your own maybe, but why are they so reticent to get like a professional coach when we spend so much more time there? The implications of your professional life seem to be sort of, again, maybe not more, but at least on par with like your physicality and stuff. What's the reticence people have to like hiring people like you?
I'm wondering if it's because with physical fitness, there is a physical, tangible outcome.
Yeah, you can see it in the mirror or something.
You can see it. And I actually hate the word coach. I hate it. Someone asked me, what does a coach do? And I said, oh, you just jump on my back and I'll take you to London for the weekend and back again. There's a lot of people calling themselves coaches, a lot of people who actually don't have coaching skills. And, my message to the world is, when you are speaking to someone and you're asking for a coach, really get an understanding what it is they do. Because most of people that I know that aren't qualified coaches are actually mentors. So they're just sharing expertise and knowledge. Where a coach will actually, if you are, for example, looking to increase your fitness, but if you've got like an emotional reason why you're not doing it, it doesn't matter who you spend a lot of money with. If you can't get past that emotional attachment and that meaning that you attach to something as to why you're not doing it, you're not going to do it.
That's a great point.
That's where you need a coach.
Well, Donna, I've really had a great time with you today. I feel like we could keep talking for like another 2 hours. Where can people find out more about you? Where can they connect with you and learn more from you?
I'm all over LinkedIn. Donna McGrath, the lawyer's coach. And I'm actually setting up my website at the moment. I haven't had to set up a website yet.
Amazing.
Which is great. So that will be the lawyerscoach.co.uk.
Sweet.
But in the meantime, I'm all over LinkedIn. Just look me up. Send me a message. Look at the information that I've got there. That sets out more information about coaching, what to look for in a coach. And I'm very happy to speak to anybody who's got an inquiry.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me, Nick.
Until next time.